Knowing each other personally and socially for the past 10 years, Kim and John have joined forces, bringing years of experience and training, providing a platform for growth and personal development, along with a little humor. John is the heart, Kim is the mind, and together they are HeartMind-ify. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to HeartMind-ify. I'm John Izze, and with me is Kim Korte. How are you, Kim?
I'm great, John. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. You know, most of you already know that we published our first episode last Saturday. It was quite exciting to get the notifications that our listeners were downloading the podcast and leaving us comments. I was so excited.
I was too. And I know there's going to be a day where I'm not as excited, but boy, it sure was nice to get confirmation that we were on the right track.
It really was. And what was really interesting was that we had users or listeners on this podcast that we didn't have when we were doing our Instagram live show. So that was pretty exciting as well.
It really was.
So today, Kim, we're going to talk about it's not the fall, it's how you get up.
Right. Just as a reminder, and in case you didn't hear our very first show, John and I alternate. I'm the mind. John's the heart, and we alternate topics every week. And today is my topic, and it really has to do with my own experience. And I think it's an experience that most everybody can relate to. I was laying on the floor of my condo, literally laying there. I don't even know how long I laid there. Honestly, I couldn't tell you, but it was a long time. I had just lost my husband. He left me for a woman who had been my friend and had worked for us because he had a chiropractic practice, and we also had a running shoe store that was related, and she worked in the chiropractic practice. I was devastated. Everything, my social contacts were all at the office because I worked all the time or in the store. Our employees, this was my vocation, right? It was my businesses I was losing, and I was losing what I thought was the love of my life. And I didn't even think I would ever get up off of that floor. I started thinking about, those Bozo Bop bags. Do you remember those as kids? You hit them and they pop right back up.
Yeah, I do remember those.
And so what brought them back up? It was that they had this round, strong anchor at the bottom. And it's filled with sand. So no matter what you did, it would come up. And it always came up quickly because it had this really strong, heavy anchor. And then it got me to thinking about just even what we were doing in our business at the time with running shoes. Because my ex-husband focused on, biomechanics, the foot, and he did an excellent job. He was a great chiropractor. But we opened this running shoe store to help people get in the right shoe, to say, look, you're either too light or too heavy for this shoe and it's causing you problems, or you need more correction because running shoes are basically an orthotic. And then there was the proper practice of how you cared for them and being able to identify when a shoe is too old. I mean, there was a lot of diagnosis that went into this. You'd think it was just that simple. Oh, this is comfortable, let me buy it. But no, there was a science to it, actually. And one of the things that was super important to prevent injury was to be able to check the life of the EVA. So all that white part that's at the bottom of your shoe is EVA. And you would press on the inside, and if you could touch your fingers, you knew that the shoe was too old and you were going to create injury because it wasn't absorbing the bounce. A lot of this got me to thinking, well, experienced runners knew this, right? They learned, and they had less injuries than your novice runners because they had this understanding. And I thought I needed to get a better understanding. And I started out, I'm going to talk about 3 things that are part of my Emotion Chef framework that I created. But these are things that helped me and have helped people who've attended my classes. And the first thing I want to talk about, or the first thing that I knew I had to change, was how I thought, what I was focusing on, where I directed my attention, because thoughts drive emotions and emotions drive thoughts, but it's our emotions that drive our decisions and behaviors. Even the person I don't know if you know this, but we have three brains. We've got our brain in our head. We actually have a little heart brain and a gut brain. They actually have people who are just devoted to studying these different aspects, these different brains, but we make decisions in all three places. But in the end, even if you're saying I'm making a logical, mind-based decision, we feel it's the right one. And that's why we go with it. So our feelings always are driving what our final actions are, what our final behavior is. So I understood I needed to prevent my personal injury by managing my thoughts. Have you had that experience, John?
I have.
With what you do?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I always go back to, what it is that I'm actually feeling at any given time. So anytime someone says something to me, or anytime I say something to someone else, I'm always engaged in their body, their body rhythm, their pattern, their response, how they respond. And usually that's all driven by how they're feeling at the time. So that's always been something very interesting for me as well. And especially doing one-on-one work, you read people's body language all the time.
I agree, because people respond differently to different things. Like we have the same situation and people can respond differently. And it's how they think about that situation. And I'll get to a little bit more into that later. But the first thing the most important thing related to thoughts, and I talk about all kinds of things, automatic negative thoughts or ants, and I talk about our propensity for going to the negative. But the most important thing I've learned with thought management is questioning them. We just have these thoughts that come up and we think that we're thinking thoughts, but we're not. And what I mean by that is, if you have a thought or do something, it's coming most likely from your past, some event, something that you were taught. 95% of our thoughts are not consciously generated, and it's because we've got lazy brains. It needs to be efficient, and it says, given this situation, this is what we've thought before, so we're going to think it again. And it's called neuronal firing, or neurons that wire together fire together. So that's what happens. And unless we stop and question, especially negative, silly thoughts, we will continue to have those thoughts. And there's an impact to that, especially if they're negative. It impacts our emotional health. It actually dramatically impacts our physical health. So when you question it, there's a series of 4 questions. Are they true? Is that thought true? And if you think it's true, can you absolutely know for sure it's 100% true? People use words like always, never, no one, everybody, every time. These all-encompassing words that are quite big. So when you question, do they always do this? Pretty much the answer is no, typically. How do I react when I have this thought is the third question. Most likely, it's not a good feeling. And how would I feel without this thought is the last question. There's a term called reframing. And if you think about a camera, and when you take a picture, you are focusing in on maybe a person or a bird, but there's so much else in the picture that's not necessarily what you're focused on. But when you look at the full picture, you might be able to focus on other things that make either that situation or that person different, and be able to not focus just on the negative, but surrounding circumstances. That's why I always tell people, like, just don't read one type of book. Don't, listen to things that are contrary. Listen to things that are not what you normally would listen to, not someone who always agrees with you, because it helps challenge your thinking, and not to argue, but to listen and to be open to hear what they say. So this is why questioning thoughts is the main point that I want to bring out about our thoughts. Then the second portion of the things that help me are adding emotion words to my vocabulary. I was walking the other day on the trail with my mask, and in fact, we couldn't recognize each other at first, but I ran into someone that I knew, and we had met a long time ago. She read my book, and we got to talking, and her friend, that I was telling her what I'm doing now with the Emotion Chef, and she said, "Oh, my friend here is a psychologist." I'm like, "Oh, hi." And she goes, "Yes." She said, "Americans don't have enough emotion words." And the reason is we take categories, or we take things that have happened to us, and we categorize events with emotion words. Like walking your dog. Like if you walk your dog and you see another dog, you're probably thinking, "Oh, cute dog." But think about if you saw a pit bull, don't you kind of associate everything that you've been learned to date? If it's negative about pit bulls, you get scared. And yet I owned a pit, and it was as sweet as can be. So while you want to have caution, you have to understand, like, everything that you think, and your fears, or your reactions are going to be based on past experiences. So when you put that experience and put an emotion word to it, when you take, let's just say, the word love, because most people can associate with that word. We love somebody.
Yeah.
But what if we use different words? Instead of loving a can of soup that's your favorite, instead of loving it, just can't you say, this is my favorite? Maybe you could say, "I really, really enjoy it." Or if you meet somebody and you're single and the person's really cute, and you say, "Oh, I'm in love." There's a connotation that comes with love, right? And so if you said, "Oh, I'm Twitter-pated," it gives it more distinction. I mean, look at a video clip. You can get them on YouTube of Bambi, or Thumper rather, first meeting the girl bunny. It's as cute as can be, but it's a perfect demonstration of what Twitterpation looks like. It's that first flush, or you could say I'm crushing, but it's giving your brain that distinction so that it will, maybe you won't fall in love so easily. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And using your example, when you are feeling love, your body immediately associates love to what you've experienced love to be in the past. And with that comes certain expectations. So if the word love is what you're describing, but it's not really love, then you're going to apply expectations that you have come to understand when you talk about love to the wrong emotion. It's almost as if you're experiencing something, but you're reacting to it differently based on past experience. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. And for people who fall in love too easily, this is a great exercise for them to use different words, because it's not that you can't fall in love eventually, but maybe it's something that you want to work into. A part of my Emotion Chef program is learning the definition of words, like where they came from, and using that as a guide for creating emotion recipes. Because as you just said, it's your experience, and our experiences are like having recipes in our brain. We put together all of the components, and it is an internal sensation that creates that emotional response. So it's interoception is the actual word for it. And so when you've got this interoception experience, interoceptual, is that the right word? But when you have it, the brain has to make sense of it. So if you have a feeling in your stomach, and let's just say you feel twitterpated in your stomach, let's just say, your brain's got to figure out, are you in love? Are you sick? Are you getting the flu? Did you eat something bad? It's like, what is this? And so it goes through the concepts in your brain really quickly and says, oh, this is an emotion response, and throws out what it's got. And if love is all you got, that's what you get. Yes, the heart can impact the brain and the mind can impact the brain, but the health of your brain is critical. Think of it as it's got its own little checkbook, and it needs deposits, and it has a ton of withdrawals. The withdrawals are what it uses to take care of our body. So to respond when our fluids are low, to make us thirsty so that we drink water, or to shiver when it's too cold to create some heat, or to sweat when we're too hot to cool us down. This is the body's job. It's called homeostasis. It's kind of getting us in this set point. But then there's emergencies, right? And know this, if you didn't know this, your mind, with your thoughts, you can think that you see a bear and your body's going to respond like accordingly. Negative thoughts or thinking things or imagining things have an effect on the body similar to being in the situation. So if you are having negative thoughts, your physical body responds in a fight or flight or emergency budget situation and releases all the cortisol and releases epinephrine and norepinephrine, these responses that would be great if it was really an emergency, if a bear was really there. But if it's not, you're just releasing these chemicals that then take away the energy necessary for the regular operations. And it also takes away like blood from your stomach so that it can digest. There's a lot of ramifications to it. So this is why making sure that your brain has enough energy, and things like sleep, diet, exercise, those are all three things. But also, those are the main things. But also, it prevents dementia. These are all things that they show helps to prevent dementia. There's certain things that you can't, there's genetics and all this other stuff, but brain health also includes thought management. Because like I said, your thoughts impact your stress responses. And I prove it, actually. I've got this monitor that can show you thinking negative thoughts will change your heart rate variability. And it's pretty fascinating. But brain health is really, really critical. And it's a big part. It's the first thing I teach in my course. And it's one of the most important parts of it.
Kim, as you're talking, the first thing that comes to mind is having a greater sense of being mindful of your thoughts, of your feelings, and your emotions. This concept of mindfulness is something we typically don't see people practicing enough today. And as I'm listening to you, I can't help to think of the importance of being mindful of the words we use, or being mindful of what I'm really feeling and what I'm really thinking, so that I don't fall back on a thought that I had many times over and assume that it is the same thing. It's the word mindfulness that's really impacting me as you are talking.
And that's very true. And the thing about mindfulness, it's there's pros and cons with everything, right? I mean, that's just the way that life goes. And the reason why the brain falls upon our past experiences is because it's energy efficient. You don't want to have to relearn how to ride a bike. You don't want to have to relearn how to get home from the grocery store. Right. The brain, has some efficiencies there. And if you have to be mindful, if you have to think harder on something, it takes energy. For instance, let's just say you're walking with someone and you have to think really hard about something. You'll stop walking. You will just stop and say, wait a minute, and you'll stop. It's like you shut out everything just for that if it's a computation or trying to get your memory back on something, just whatever focus it is, you stop because it requires energy. People might feel like, oh, it's too much to be mindful. But if you get in the habit of just challenging the thought and not taking terribly long, but just trying to distinguish as on a more regular basis, especially the more damaging and negative thoughts. And then just by the fact that you learn emotion words, like just pick one emotion word a month and just notice how you use it and when you use it. Just one. We are one single body. We work together. There's nothing that you do to change your brain that doesn't impact the rest of your body. Or if when you change any habit, it impacts you as a whole. So doing little things can make a big difference. So by challenging one kind of thought, like when I teach my class and I talk about ants, I'm like, pick one. Don't pick a bunch. Just pick one ant and you'll notice a big difference. Pick the most offending one. And we just need to learn that being mindful doesn't have to be overwhelming or an all-day thing or, make it unable for you to function in life because you're being mindful of everything. But it's definitely mindfulness is important. There's a lot of studies around mindfulness and its importance.
Because I can, as you're talking about mindfulness, I'm thinking of when I was a child and I would say something that would be off color, or I would say something that would make someone mad. And I can hear my mother saying, why would you say that? And what she was doing, now that I'm an adult and I realize it, what she was doing is she was asking me to be mindful of what it is that I'm saying. Are you just reacting to something? Are you feeling a certain way? I didn't understand that as a child, but I know now why she was doing that. And, as an adult, I can come home from work and sit down and say, wow, I was really nasty to this person today, or I really need to make sure that I give that person more time when they explain something because they need that time.
That's so funny, John, because mothers and their impressions on you. When I was a little girl, I can still remember my brother was in the front seat and my mom was driving and I was in the back, kind of sitting in the middle because, there was no seatbelts back then. And my brother, of course, did something annoying. And I called him a not so nice name that I had heard.
Right.
And my mother stopped the car, turned around and looked at me and she goes, do you know what that word means? And I said, no. She goes, well, then you better know what it means before you use it. And honestly, we use a lot of words today and we don't even know what they mean. This is why, to me, the Emotion Chef is so helpful because you learn the words, the emotion words, like what they mean and how, you can use them to give them more influence, give them more impact in your life. I didn't use that word again because I found out what it meant. And I'm not saying this just in the swear word category, but I'm just saying in the essence of using it in the right way at the right time so that you have clarity in conversation with yourself and with others.
Yeah, this is really good stuff. I mean, you and I could talk about this all day, and I think it's a good topic for our listeners to listen to, right? Because, there are so many people out there that really don't know why they do the things they do or why they say the things they do. And giving a little bit of information to our listeners and to each other, it helps us to take that pause. It helps us to give ourselves the ability to say, you know what, I need to pause here for a moment and really look at why I said that or why I'm feeling a certain way. And this is really good. Thank you so much for sharing that with us today.
Sure. I just kind of want to wrap it up.
Yep.
And just say that managing thoughts and making sure we take good care of our brain and trying to be mindful of the emotion words that we use, our emotional responses and what that word is. These are all great tools for resilience. And resilience is how we get up. And the more resilience we have, the faster we get up. these tools will help you. And then next week, John is going to kind of help us to get into another facet of resiliency,
which would be mindfulness. So next week's episode is going to be on meditation. You know, a lot of people have different feelings about meditation. Some people love it, and others struggle with not having enough time in their day to meditate. So tune in next week, because I'm going to talk about the purpose and the benefits of meditation and give you a couple of tips to use.
And John, I just want to put in one point, and I hear this a lot because meditation, the importance of meditation is a part of my course, the Emotion Chef course. And that is, people say, I can't, like, I just can't do it. They start thinking they can't stay in it. And you're going to address techniques, right? To how to make meditation easier and less frustrating. Because I think people get frustrated a lot.
No, I think you're 100% correct. I'm going to teach something next week called the 3 Fs. And I think that will help a lot of people understand and how to start a meditation, how to go through the meditation, then how to end it, and what we need to do to make it consistency in our life. Because like anything else, if there's no consistency, then it's just one thing that we have done. So yeah, I mean, I'm really looking forward to the next show as well. And Kim, I just want to say thank you so much for this today. I think it was very informative, and stop and think, guys. I think that question yourself, and remember, it's not just the fall, but it's how quick you get up.
It's true, John. Well, thanks. And once again, I always enjoyed talking with you. We could talk forever and ever and ever, but I don't know that everyone else wants to hear us talk forever and ever. So we should say goodbye.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. So, well, thanks everyone for listening. And remember, you leave us a comment so that we can answer some of the questions in future shows. And remember that you can download our podcast on Saturdays right here on Podbean, and now available on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Play. And if you follow us, you will get a notification when a new podcast has been uploaded. Kim, have a great week, and thank you to all of our listeners.
Yes, thank you, guys.
New shows are available every Saturday right here on HeartMind-ify.podbean.com or download the Podbean app. Kim and I want to thank each and every one of you for allowing us to be a small part of your life. Be kind to yourself, and remember, our hearts tell the story, but our mind is the conductor.